Hello, YouTube. So, scientists have found a second planet inside the Earth. It's a lost world with mountains and oceans. Deep inside, they found the remains of another planet, which was destroyed by an incredible cataclysm. This should be a real sensation because actually a second planet is located inside our own. Let's look at the research of American, British, and Russian scientists, not in that order, but as much as we can. The ancient Earth, with its oceans and continents, is, as if it were, embedded in ours. What does this mean? Maybe there was another, even more developed civilization before us. Maybe. The main mystery of our planet, the oceans that splash, even in the Arctic, even in the tropics, everywhere, they are very young. The age of the Earth is several billion years. The age of the Earth crust under the oceans is at most several dozens of millions of years. For example, somewhere in the Moscow region, you can walk along a ravine and easily find a rock that is a couple of billion years old. Most likely, it will be granite, a pebble that was dragged to the region by a glacier during the Ice Age. Going down to the bottom of the ocean, you will never find anything like this. Why is it that? Scientists have put a lot of invention and wit to explain it somehow. Today, the hypothesis of the spreading of the continents prevails. You've probably heard, and if not heard, check right now. You can do it yourself. The contours of Africa and Latin America on the map coincide. They can be glued into one. This means that the continents sort of parted, forming a gap. The Atlantic Ocean is that gap. It happened relatively recently, even after the age of the dinosaurs, and other continents are basically in the same way. It is assumed that once upon a time, all the continents were one. Then they separated, and that's what's between them, our oceans. Therefore, the oceans are relatively young. But stop. Even if you connect all the continents into one, they will not be enough to cover the entire Earth. The share of land is only 29%, and no matter how you move the continents, there will be no more land. That single continent also floated in some kind of ocean. So where are its tracks, so to say? There aren't. Therefore, there is a competing hypothesis. The Earth is gradually increasing in size. By the way, this hypothesis was widely popular in the USSR. But with the decline of the Soviet Union, there was no one to support it. And now it seems to have been rejected, but not refuted. So once the Earth consisted only of the mainland, but it began to increase from the inside, the mantle has cracked, the continents have diverged. What is between our young oceans, and why did the Earth suddenly begin to increase? That's the most interesting thing. There is a hypothesis that gravity, which we think is a constant force, is not really constant. It is gradually weakening. By loosening its grip, gravity can no longer hold the Earth firmly with a solid sphere. At the same time, new matter is being formed in the Earth's core from the vacuum, which, as is known, has the property of generating elementary particles as is from nothing or in some other way. And that's how the Earth expands and expands. In the future, it will become like Jupiter, very huge. And most importantly, if everything is like that, a big bang is not needed for the creation of the universe. The universe, like the Earth and everything in general, expands by itself. Do you see weaknesses in this beautiful hypothesis? Although it is very well grounded and mathematically calculated, it is of course full of ambiguities. Most of all, astronomers like it. Those of them that have been looking for ways to get rid of the Big Bang for a long time. Apparently, no one believes in the Big Bang anymore, but many are afraid to admit it. A new discovery about which it's finally time to talk about may even turn everything upside down. The second planet inside our planet. That's what it is. The Americans were engaged in routine business. They studied the subsoil under Antarctica. To do this, scientists send an acoustic beam deep into the depths. Simply, they blow up something. And then they catch reflections. Suddenly, they came across something strange right near the core of the Earth. The core of the Earth turned out to be wrapped in the remains of an ancient ocean. It's as if the core is the yolk, and the ancient ocean is the protein. And we live on the shell. We have never seen the core. Our deepest well only scratched the shell. The radius of the Earth is 6,370 kilometers. The depth of the Kola super deep is 12.2 kilometers. Compare yourself. And you can see my video about the Kola super deep. Find a few interesting things, by the way. But we guess that it consists of iron and nickel and generates a magnetic field in some not quite clear way. The solid core, in theory, is surrounded by a layer of molten mantle on which the continents float. Otherwise, how would they spread out? And there should be no traces of the ancient ocean there. All this construction allegedly appeared at the very beginning of the creation of our planet and has not changed. But the ocean was found at the depth of 3,000 kilometers, that is in the middle. Moreover, on that ancient surface, the researchers examined mountains bigger than our Everest. It's like a whole lost world. And how to explain all this now? In the meantime, no one knows. It looks like the Earth was once about the size of planet Mars. Oceans splashed on it, mountains towered, and who knows what else was there. Maybe some incredible animals, plants, maybe even intelligent life. Was it a civilization like ours, or was it wiser than ours? And then something happened. Another substance suddenly fell to the earth, completely covering this world. The earth has almost doubled in size. And then it all started from the beginning. Life was born again, civilization reappeared. Where did this matter come from? The first thing that comes to mind, the catastrophe that gave birth to our moon. So far, it is believed that an asteroid hit the Earth and tore off pieces from us that merged into the moon. But this hypothesis has serious drawbacks. And what if something brought down a pile of matter on us, part of which became the moon, and part increased the size of the Earth? Perhaps we're talking about a collision with another planet, about the size of Mars, with which we merged. And here, of course, you can let your imagination run wild. They have been saying for a long time, wasn't there another civilization before us? And they being different researchers and thinkers from the antiquity on. Did the Egyptians and the Greeks take their knowledge from this another civilization before us? And now it comes out that, yeah, maybe. Of course, there are many buts, so to say. That civilization had to completely perish. When the catastrophe or disaster happened, it's still unclear, but how would it, even partially surviving, have kept this knowledge for several hundred millions of years? That's not possible. Finally, did it even exist? It's a pity that we won't find out soon, if ever. It is impossible to get there by a well, to go down. And the remnants of that world are squeezed and welded by the heat of the catastrophe and the inner warmth of the earth. Now, we will continue to build hypotheses and know that we're not the first ones on our planet, but that's as much as we can say today. But recall something else. In the year 2007, scientists scanning the deep interior of the earth have found evidence of a vast water reservoir beneath Eastern Asia that is at least the volume of the Arctic Ocean. The discovery marks the first time such a large body of water has been found in the planet's deep mantle. In some ways, Earth's inner core remains as mysterious as it was when Jules Verne published his wonderful, fanciful journey to the center of the Earth in the year 1864. Those scientists have known since the 1950s that our planet isn't hollow, as Verne predicted. The planet's interior is still unexplored. The immense heat and pressure are simply too great for any human or human-made probe to travel there. But then speed forward to the year 2023. Now people are only just realizing that there is a massive ocean hidden under the Earth's crust. It turns out there is a huge supply of water 400 miles underground, stored in the rock known as ringwoodite. Scientists previously discovered that water is stored inside the mantle rock in a sponge-like state, which isn't a liquid, solid, or a gas, but instead it's a fourth state. The scientific paper titled Dehydration Melting at the Top of the Lower Mantle was published in the year 2014 and laid out the findings. The ringwoodite is like a sponge soaking up water. There is something very special about the crystal structure of the ringwoodite that allows it to attract hydrogen and trap water. Scientists made the findings at the time after studying earthquakes and discovering that seismometers were picking up shock waves under the surface of the earth. From that, they were able to establish that the water was being held in the rock known as ringwoodite. If the rock contained just 1% water, it would mean that there is 3 times more water under the surface of the earth than there is in the oceans on the surface. The size of the earth, about 12,750 kilometers in diameter, was known by the ancient Greeks, but it was not until the turn of the 20th century that scientists determined that our planet was made up of 3 main layers: crust, mantle, and core. This layered structure can be compared to that of a boiled egg. The crust, the outmost layer, is rigid and very thin compared with the other two. Beneath the oceans, the crust varies little in thickness, generally extending only to about 5 kilometers. The thickness of the crust beneath continents is much more variable, but averages about 30 kilometers. Under large mountain ranges, such as the Alps or the Sierra Nevada, however, the base of the crust can be as deep as 100 kilometers. Like the shell of an egg, the Earth's crust is brittle and can break. Below the crust is the mantle, a dense, hot layer of semi-solid rock, approximately 2,900 kilometers thick. The mantle, which contains more iron, magnesium, and calcium than the crust, is hotter and denser because temperature and pressure inside the Earth increase with depth. As a comparison, the mantle might be thought of as the white of the boiled egg. At the center of the Earth lies the core, which is nearly twice as dense as the mantle because its composition is metallic, iron-nickel alloy, rather than stony. Unlike the yolk of an egg, however, the Earth's core is actually made up of 2 distinct parts: a 2,200 kilometer thick liquid outer core and 1,250 kilometers thick solid inner core. As the Earth rotates, the liquid outer core spins, creating the Earth's magnetic field. Not surprisingly, the Earth's internal structure influences plate tectonics. The upper part of the mantle is cooler and more rigid than the deep mantle. In many ways, it behaves like the overlying crust. Together, they form a rigid layer of rock called the lithosphere, from Greek lithos for stone. The lithosphere tends to be thinnest under the oceans and is volcanically active, and in volcanically active continental areas such as the western United States, averaging at least 80 kilometers in thickness over much of the Earth. The lithosphere has been broken up into the moving plates that contain the world's continents and oceans. Scientists believe that below the lithosphere is a relatively narrow, mobile zone in the mantle called the asthenosphere, from the asthenes, Greek for weak. This zone is composed of hot, semi-solid material which can soften and flow after being subjected to high temperature and pressure from over geologic time. The rigid lithosphere is thought to float or moves about on the slowly flowing asthenosphere. In 1970, the Soviet Union embarked on what was arguably one of the most ambitious exploration projects in the entire human history known to us. The Soviets attempted to drill as far as possible into the Earth's crust. This solid layer of rock, which sits above the mostly solid mantle and eventually the Earth's partially molten core, is the only part of the planet that has ever been seen by human eyes. No one knew what would happen if they tried to get through it. Well, by August 1994, the Kola super deep borehole, set amidst a bleak expanse of Arctic tundra in the northeast of Russia, had reached really staggering depths, stretching some around 12,260 meters. I think it's 40,230 feet underground. But then the drill got stuck. When they started, the team running the project made predictions about what they expected to find, specifically that the Earth would get 1 degree warmer for every 100 meters, that they traveled towards its center. But it soon became clear that this was not the case. In the mid-1980s, when they reached 10 kilometers, it was already 180 degrees Celsius, 356 Fahrenheit, nearly double that was expected. In these extreme conditions, the granite eventually ceased to be drillable. It was behaving more like plastic than rock. The experiment was halted, and no one has managed to pass the crust threshold to this day. The only remaining hint of the Kola borehole's existence is a rusty metal cap embedded in the ground. You should see my video. I'll put a link in the description to this one about that undertaking. Seismology involves studying the waves of energy produced by the sudden movement of the ground during massive events such as earthquakes. This includes so-called surface waves, which are superficial, and body waves, which travel through the interior of the Earth. To pick them up, scientists use instruments on the opposite side of the world to the earthquakes they are detecting and examine whatever has managed to wiggle its way through. By analyzing the different wave patterns that result, they can start to piece together what might be going on hundreds of kilometers underfoot. It's these features that allow the Danish geophysicist Inge Lehmann to make a major discovery in 1936. 7 years earlier, a large earthquake in New Zealand had led to a surprising seismic result. One type of body wave, which can travel through any material, had made it through the Earth. although they had been bent by some obstacle along the way. Meanwhile, another kind, known to be unable to traverse liquids, had not been able to pass. This overturned the long-standing belief that the core is entirely solid and led to the modern theory that there is a solid inner enveloped in a liquid outer layer, a sort of reverse coconut, if you will. Eventually, the method was refined, meaning that it was possible to not only peer beneath the Earth's surface, but to visualize its hidden depths in 3 dimensions. Almost immediately, this led to the discovery of the Earth blobs. Though the mantle was previously thought of as a homogeneous layer, geologists detected 2 colossal regions inside it, one that straddles Africa and one below the Pacific Ocean, where the earthquake waves encounter resistance and slow down, just as with the Earth core. These areas are clearly different from the rest of the mantle. In fact, they represent some of the largest features on the planet. These are the large, low shear velocity provinces. It's tricky to find any familiar analog for their peculiar forms. They could be described as unusually bulbous, globular, mountains or mounds, bigger than continents. Interestingly, the structures seem to have a closer resemblance to colossal piles of sand. One study found that they had sharp slopes in places, as well as shallow ones, and even a few overhangs. Amidst the debate about their appearance, the features have come to be known as blobs. But the large, low shear velocity provinces' puzzling appearance is nothing compared to the confusion surrounding how they formed, or even what they are made of. So those scientists know there is something going on there. They are yet to discover exactly what they're looking at. A clue has emerged from another long-standing source of bafflement. If the large, low shear velocity provinces are made from the same stuff as the rest of the Earth mantle, they are breaking a fundamental law of physics. That is because the blobs seem to be simultaneously hotter than the surrounding rock and denser. Just like a stubborn jar lid that has been run under a hot tap to release it, materials tend to expand when they're heated up, making them less dense. This is hard to reconcile if the blobs are made from plain old silicates, like the rest of the mantle, the dominant mineral found in granite and sandstone. As a result, it's thought that the blobs must have a different chemical makeup to the surrounding rock. Perhaps they are composed of minerals that are unusually rich in something heavy like iron or nickel. There are different ideas on how this all comes about. And this is where it really gets interesting. The earliest idea is that the blobs are truly ancient, dating back billions of years to the primordial Earth, when our planet was still forming and its mantle, which is now made of solid rock, was an ocean of molten magma. As the minerals in this layer began to harden and crystallize, some regions held onto impurities that had been mixed in when it was still a liquid. These have remained in place for all this time, and today they formed the strange blobs. Back in 2014, an international team of geologists calculated that this kind of blob could easily last 3 billion years, even though the Earth's mantle is always swirling around gently as hotter parts rise and cooler ones descend. And one reason for them not deforming much could be that they are very rigid, according to scientists that studied this. Another possibility is that the blobs were formed by tectonic processes. As children learn in school, the Earth's crust is cracked into tectonic plates. which are constantly moving around and slipping underneath, as well as over the top of one another. Some geologists believe that the large low shear velocity provinces may be made from these broken off pieces of crust, which sink to the bottom of the mantle and form a lumpy structure that have a different chemical makeup to the surrounding rock. In fact, research suggests that if you add up the total amount of crust that has ever melted back into the deep earth, it amounts to about from 7 to 53% of the volume of the planet, more than enough to account for the size of the blobs. The crust is being stripped off and added to those piles. In this scenario, the large low shear velocity provinces are composed of the mostly basalt rock that has drifted down from the heavy oceanic plates that were pulled under. But even sedimentary rocks that were once burrowed into by an ancient fish, or that contained the remains of long-vanished ocean creatures like plesiosaurs, could eventually end up near the center of the earth this way, though they make up a tiny proportion of the earth's crust. Essentially, the blobs are a geological graveyard. Our third proposition is that long after the earth formed, iron somehow seeped out of the earth's core and ended up in the mantle. This was incorporated into the rock in some areas, leading to the development of the strange blobs. However, scientists say this idea is not particularly popular. There's currently no clear reason why this would happen. And then in 2021, a team of scientists from the Arizona State University had a bold idea. What if the blobs were aliens of a sort, after all? It's a little known fact that there are actually 3 celestial bodies in our little patch of the solar system: the Earth, the Moon, and the Theia. Today, the latter is little known, is a little more than a ghost after smashing into our planet 4.5 billion years ago. For decades, it was thought that when the small Mars-sized planet collided with the infant Earth, the resulting debris, mostly from the other planet itself, coalesced to form the Moon. But there are problems with this idea, such as the fact that the Earth and the Moon share similar chemical signatures, as though they were created out of the same material. Instead, the researchers have suggested an alternative. After slamming into the Earth, Theia became mixed up with its inner contents, forming part of the mantle. Meanwhile, the Moon formed not from the extraterrestrial planet itself, but from the shards of the Earth that were blasted out. The twist is that Theia did not mix into the Earth in its entirety. Most of it was so dense that it was not affected by the currents within the mantle. In fact, the foreign planet exists as lumps inside the Earth to this day. It's possible that these are the blobs and that there are fragments of an alien world lurking deep beneath our feet. Whatever they're made of, there's a growing consensus that the Earth's strange blobs, as distant as they seem, are affecting life in the surface in tangible ways. For a start, they may be influencing how volcanoes are distributed. Most of the world's most famous geological flashpoints, such as the Ring of Fire, a 25,000-mile-long chain of volcanoes circling the Pacific Ocean, it's about 40,233 kilometers, that are found above the places where the tectonic plates meet and jostle for space. But oddly, some highly active areas don't follow this pattern. The Hawaiian Islands in the North Pacific Ocean are home to 6 active volcanoes as well as extensive lava fields, and some places where magma bubbles up almost continuously. This is despite the fact that they sit safely in the middle of the Pacific Plate, thousands of miles from any others. If you've never been to the Big Island, I urge you to go there. You will see wonderful things, fascinating things, and know outside of that the waters around the island contain many mysteries. I've studied some and I'll talk about them later, some other day. This today is not about this, but I urge you to see that island. I think it's the best, in my opinion, of all the Hawaiian islands. And you will see many interesting things there. But anyway, one explanation is the so-called mantle plumes, theoretical hotspots in the Earth's lower mantle, where rock that's hotter than its surroundings, and it rises up, forming tree-like networks of vertical channels all the way to the crust. They begin in the layer directly around the core, the interior of which can reach the same temperature as the surface of the sun. Imagine that. Excuse me. Basically, they form the core. They form because the core is relatively hot compared to the overlaying mantle. So thermal instabilities develop. Wherever these blistering zones seem to meet the surface of the Earth, you can usually find volcanoes. There's a catch, however. The concept of mantle plumes was first proposed as far back as the 1970s, and they remain almost as mysterious as the large, low, shear velocity provinces. In recent years, the evidence for them being real from seismic tomography has been getting stronger and stronger, according to scientists. So there is hardly anybody who has doubts about their existence. But then, of course, there's many things that are not so sure about them. Today, it's possible to make basic maps of mantle plumes using seismology. And back in 2008, geologists discovered something intriguing. They're almost all located at the edges of the Earth blobs, the ones that I told you about, those mysterious structures, whatever they may be. This has led to the chicken and egg, or rather blob and volcanic hotspot scenario. Are these regions more geologically active because the blobs are there already, or are the blobs located where they are because the hotspot activity is somehow pushing them into these positions? It might happen something like this. Ocean plates which sink into the Earth's depths eventually end up near the bottom of the mantle, where they form the blobs. Oddly, at these depths, they are more dense than the surrounding rock. This form a kind of insulating blanket above the core, preventing the superhot regions that give rise to mantle plumes from developing beneath them. So they form around the edges instead. In this way, you end up with mantle plumes 2,891 kilometers above the borders of the blobs. In our own terrestrial realm, it looks like the blobs are encouraging them to develop at particular locations. If this is the case, it suggests that these peculiar hidden structures are having a profound impact on our planet, effectively dictating where certain groupings of volcanoes occur, as well as the island chains that they create. The Hawaiian archipelago wouldn't even exist without them, and neither would China's Hainan Island. And the large, low shear velocity provinces may have an even wider reach. Scientists have long wondered why the Earth spins on its axis at the angle that it does. In other words, why is the North Pole in the Arctic and not somewhere else. While many factors are thought to contribute to minor wobbles either way, including climate change, the Earth's axis has remained broadly stable for billions of years. One intriguing observation is that the Earth blobs sit neatly on the either side of the axis, hinting that either they migrated there because of the Earth spinning, or they are influencing the way it does it. Exactly how the large, low shear velocity provinces could be affecting the planet's inertia is kind of hard to pin down. So, though the deep Earth blobs are still as baffling as ever, they are already set to reveal some of our planet's secrets, and possibly even some from a long-lost alien world. Perhaps one day we will find out an even better way to peer inside the Earth, to glance at them, and also to see what else is down there, because we know very little. So, in the future, I want to bring to your attention some more, so to say, cutting-edge hypotheses on what our planet is, including the alive Earth hypothesis that was put forth decades ago in the Soviet Union. I thank you for your attention to my work, and if you can support my research, you can do so. You will see how to do it through the links in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel. Please subscribe and like my videos.